This is the Crowd Crux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project with your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at FULFILLRITE.com. What up, crowdfunders? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Hope you've been having a great last week. In Brooklyn, the weather is finally transitioning from this sort of dreary winter weather into being spring and hopefully soon summer. So we're seeing a lot warmer days, a lot more bright light, just extending into the evening. Finally, it's not getting dark at like 5 o'clock anymore. So this is my favorite time of the year when we sort of enter into the summer months, because I think I was meant to live in a warm environment and a warm climate, and I love just the constant sunlight, and it really improves moods. I think it really uplifts people and gets me just so motivated and rearing to go. So I'm excited for that. But aside from that, work has been really good for me recently. I had this really cool trip where I also I was flown in a helicopter all over New York City. It was awesome. I made a video on it. If you're on my newsletter, you might have seen that. But so things are going really good. I'm looking forward to the summer months, planning some of my trips that I have in order. So I hope that you also had a productive and a happy week last week. And today's podcast, this episode, that as I was recording it, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is probably one of the best episodes and interviews I've done in a really long time. And it's not necessarily because Jodi has the most successful, $1 million Kickstarter campaign. It's not that. It has to do with the heart and the transparency and the heartfulness, I guess the way that she is able to share this story with us, and just how heartfelt it is. The fact that she is a working mother, she has a typical 9-to-5 job, she's a teacher, and she also is taking care of 2 kids. She has a bustling family life, lots of commitments, but at the same time, she was able to launch and run a Kickstarter campaign, which was very successful, and get the word out there about this new project that she has. So I think this is an inspiration for other female entrepreneurs out there. I also think it's an inspiration for anyone who's trying to juggle doing a Kickstarter campaign with also running a 9-to-5 job. It's a very difficult thing. So today, in this episode, I really want you to not only listen to her story, but she does share some great tactics and some great tips, particularly if you do not have a very big budget to spend for this crowdfunding campaign. If you're looking at a sort of on the lower end, a budget, which is going to be used for advertising, putting together the video, really everything that you're going to be doing for the project, and you don't have a lot of money to spend, this is the episode to listen to, because with less than $2,000 in a budget, you're spending $450 on a video, less than 500 email subscribers, she was able to raise $20,000 on Kickstarter for this new system that she created, called Circus Vowels, empowering beginning and struggling readers. So you're going to hear about this incredible story. You're going to gain access to all these strategies and tips, things you can do on Facebook to actually boost the amount that people pledge to your Kickstarter campaign. And finally, I just think it's a really neat project. I think that reading, particularly teaching, is one of those areas where we need more change, we need more innovation, because our schools nowadays, it's really not that great. And we have to remember that the youngsters are the ones that someday are going to replace us and they're going to lead the country. So it's kind of a cool interview that I thought, and I thought there was a lot of great information for you. The final thing I want to say before we hop into that interview is that if you are on a shoestring budget, you don't have a lot of money to spend, maybe to bring a mentor on your team or to enroll in one of my more high-ticket courses, you don't have a lot of money to spend leading up to the project, I have a great deal for you today. So if you are interested, you like this podcast, and you like the interviews I've done, you like the energy and the passion that I bring to my work, and you want to gain access to my audiobook, the Kickstarter Launch Formula. Audible is running this really cool deal where when you go through my link and you sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible, which if you're not interested, you can always cancel that trial. You will also get a free copy of my book, the Kickstarter Launch Formula, and you can listen to this while you're commuting to work. You can listen to this on the subway. You can listen wherever you like. I bring the same energy and passion when reading this book. You're going to instantly gain access to all those strategies that you can use, that you can apply to your project, and it's free. You really just can't beat that deal. So if you're interested in taking advantage of that, you can go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. And that link will take you to the Audible page where you can sign up for the free 30-day trial. And you'll also then get a free copy of my book, the Kickstarter Launch Formula. So I hope you enjoy it, and also give me a rating and a review so that other people know that it's a good book to check out. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Jodi, welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you on. You have an incredible story. You've also been hustling, getting this Kickstarter project in order. You've raised over $20,000. Congratulations and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you, Sal, so much for having me. I've been listening to your podcast for such a long time, and I feel like one of the reasons why my Kickstarter was so successful is because of this podcast. So thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored to be on here.
That's awesome. I mean, it's really cool because it's kind of like you're coming back on the show to then share your own tips and advice. So it's this weird like karmic circle. You learn from it, and then you applied that and you were successful. Now you're coming back and sort of sharing your own advice and perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Did you learn from like any other sources when you're getting your project together? I was just saying before the show, I think there's like a dearth of education when it comes to crowdfunding, and it's really hard, very difficult in the early stages getting a project up off the ground. So did you learn from any other sources besides my show?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so hard, and it's so much. It's so big, and you want to do so well at it. So I did. I listened to your podcast. I also got on YouTube and Googled successful Kickstarters, and there's tons of videos of people that have been successful. I watched tons of their videos on Kickstarter app. They have a help center that has just oodles and oodles of information as far as, where you should start, what you need to do beforehand. And it just gives so much great information. So I read, pretty much all the articles that were on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So, yeah.
I think that you have a really unique position here with running this project, because a lot of the campaigners we bring on, maybe they're doing a startup company, they hire an agency, they have a big team, but really this was your work. And you also have the obligation of having a full-time job and also 2 small kids at home. So I can only imagine having to juggle all of this and also run a campaign. So I want to first share with the listeners, could you tell us a little bit about maybe your story and why it is you wanted to make this project and put that into the world?
Okay, sure. So I am a first grade teacher, and I've been teaching for 15 years. And one of the things that I really started to notice probably like 3 or 4 years into my teaching career was that children were really, really struggling with learning how to read, and more specifically, long vowels and short vowels, which I know most people, when I say that, they're like, well, which is which? So like a short vowel would be like a, I, and then a long vowel would be like a, E, I, make the sound when you're sounding out the word. So I did what everybody does. When I first started teaching, I went to Google to try to find a reading strategy that would help them learn how to read. So as it stands right now, we have lots of different strategies for all the different vowel consonant combinations. So if you have 2 vowels next to each other, the saying might be, if 2 vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. And then if there's like an E at the end of the word, like in the word bike, they might have a magic E. And there's all these different strategies for the different vowel consonant combinations. And I started thinking to myself, well, this is absolutely crazy. I think that there should be one strategy that you can apply to all the different vowel consonant combinations. So if there's one vowel in the word, whether there's two vowels next to each other in the word, whether if there's a vowel, then a consonant, and then a vowel, or if there's a vowel and then two consonants between it and then a vowel. Like, I think there should be one strategy to help with confusion.
Yeah.
So at that point, I searched the internet and there was nothing. And so I thought, well, I'm going to create something then. So that's kind of where I started. I started by creating a reading strategy that you can apply to all the different vowel consonant combinations to take the confusion and the frustration away from learning how to read.
Okay.
And
Can I just ask you one really quick question?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of teachers look at the curriculum or look at the way that the kids are taught, and they're like, wow, this is really inefficient, or kids just are having difficulty paying attention or applying these strategies. And a lot of the times those conversations kind of end over coffee with other teachers, or just sort of complaining to your family, or really just wishing there was another solution. Why is it that you actually decided to say, okay, I'm going to create my own thing? I'm going to either do a crowdfunding campaign, or I'm going to put together my own project. That's a very different way of thinking.
Right. Well, I had started this strategy and I just kind of did it in my classroom with my students, and I found it super effective. People, and then I started telling my teacher friends about it and they were using it, but it was just word of mouth. Like, I would have to go and explain it to every single person. And then I started getting these emails from people saying, hey, I hear you created this great reading strategy. Tell me about it. And then my friends that were starting to have babies started asking me, I have no idea how to teach my child how to read. How am I going to do this? And I would explain it to them. And so I kind of actually got tired of explaining it to everybody. And I was like, all right, why don't I just write a book and then I can just give it to them. And then that way they have the visuals there, they have everything. And I'm a very interactive teacher. So I like my kids up. I like them moving. I like them engaged in the lesson. So in addition to the book, I also created these letter vests that the kids can wear. They can get up and act it out. So a letter vest would look like, it's almost like a really small sandwich board that, it's like an advertising sandwich board, but it's like a paper. It's a little bit thicker than paper. So they slide it over their heads and they have the capital letter on one side and they have the lowercase letter on the other side. And the consonant letters are blue and the vowels are red. So then when we get up, and the one great thing about my strategy is that you can act it out. So the kids can get up with the letter vest on and they can act out the strategy to help them remember which vowel is going to make which sound within the word. So when I put all that together, I was like, well, I have all these pieces for a kit that I can just start selling to teachers and kind of get it out there. So that's kind of when I decided, all right, I'm going to.
Had you had any background in business at all? Because that's a really entrepreneurial mindset. I think the getting the organic feedback, that's amazing. I mean, people telling you, hey, what is this strategy that you're using that are getting these results? The interactivity, I love that. But to say from the next step, okay, how do I monetize that? Like, that's a very business mindset. Do you have any experience with that, or just kind of just what you thought?
I have zero. I have none. But I've really started to get into podcasting, and I have a 45-minute commute to and from work. So that's kind of where I go. I kind of just listen to podcasts and kind of educate myself because I'm such a first grade teacher. Like, my master's is in administration, but I'm still a first grade teacher. You know what I mean? So yeah. I have no kind of degree or no classes or anything that have taught me how to be an entrepreneur. So.
So you saw this solution that was working. You were getting feedback from other people basically saying, hey, we need this thing. Like, when will it exist? Can you come and teach us? And you decided to make this system more into a book or more into something that you can at least give to other people. So when did then like crowdfunding enter the picture? What sort of did that solve, or how did you discover that?
Okay, so I'd heard about Kickstarter and I kind of did a little bit of research, and I was a little bit like, I thought I had a good plan, but I just it didn't feel right. I feel like it has to be like the perfect timing. It has to feel right. And so this opportunity came up where they were going to be using my product, my Circus Vowels interactive reading strategies, my book, my kits, my posters, everything that I've created in this kit. And they were going to take it on a national media tour for, it does like little news segments, and they, marketing it for parent created materials for reluctant readers. So like different cool things that parents have created.
Who is they, by the way?
It's called Capital One Media.
Okay.
It's
wow.
It's a great.
That's a really big deal.
These segments, yeah. So I thought, and this happened back in January. They came to me and said we want to do this during March's Reading Month, since it's a Reading Month product. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a perfect opportunity to marry the two, the Kickstarter and this national media tour, and kind of, go together and,
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem with that was I was on another website, and there was like a Kickstarter guru that was on there, and you could ask him all these questions. So I told him that I was going on this national media tour and asked him if he thought that would be beneficial. And he actually told me no, which I was really shocked at. And I kind of said, well, why do you think that's not a good choice for me? And he said, because people like things that they can click on. And I thought, and he goes, if it's on TV and they can't go click on it right away,
yeah,
it's not really as beneficial. And I actually, after going through all of this, and like I knew when the segments were going to air, so they would air, and I didn't really see a whole lot of interaction right afterwards. A little bit, but not a whole bunch. But I was able to get the web clips, or the little segments, and use those to my advantages on social media, on my email address, website, or my email
so
list.
Good branding,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a really good thing to bring up, because a lot of the times when you have a URL on TV, or even if you have a URL on a podcast, it's very difficult to get people to go, because you have to spell it out. You have to make sure that people are using the right thing. So actually, one tip for the listeners, if you are doing something like that, or sort of a live event, a really easy way is if you use something like a mobile texting app, where someone will text to a specific number and then it will send them a link. That's a really great way to capture media attention if you're doing it on TV, or if you're doing like a live event, because that way people just need the number, they can text us something to it, and then it'll send them that link, which they can then go and check out.
That's great advice. That's great to know.
So let's get back to your story a little bit here. So you sort of discovered that crowdfunding could be one way, I guess, to get the word out there, not only about the project, but also get the funding to get this into a lot of people's hands. Is that right?
Right. So like one of the things I learned when I listened to your podcast is the email address, your contact list should be huge. Like you have to do all this stuff to get these email addresses. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to collect all these email addresses for my Kickstarter. So I kind of changed my mindset, and I thought, what do I have? What are my strengths? What do I have that I can leverage? And I thought, I have 1,500 Facebook friends. So I started thinking, how can I leverage that to my advantage? I don't have a huge budget, so it's not like, I could, pay for all this advertising on Facebook. So I printed off tons of sheets of paper with all my friends on it. And I kind of went through and I highlighted my friends that had like over 1,000 followers. And so I sent them all a Facebook message, and I said, I obviously started off with something personal to begin with, about their family, or about maybe a trip they just took, or something that was, kind, and, just let them know that I was kind of following them on Facebook and really enjoying what I was seeing and stuff like that. And then after that, I asked if they would mind please posting and sharing my Kickstarter and my story. And I think every single person responded back with, yes, they would love to do it. Except for one, which I was really, really, really happy with. And then I went through, and then I targeted my friends who had young children that might be interested in the product. And so then I highlighted them, and I sent them a message, and I said, on the day of my launch, will you please launch? And I kind of gave them like some bullet points, and I gave them some pictures they could use and stuff like that. And then I think that was huge in the beginning to get it out there. It was huge. And it was free. I didn't have to pay for it. And it was, hundreds of people, thousands of people, seeing my posts and seeing my Kickstarter launch. And then I again asked them in the middle of the Kickstarter if they would put something, and at the end of my Kickstarter. So it was a great way for me to use something that I had to my advantage.
Okay, so when you were sending that message, was this all sort of back and forth on Facebook? Like you were saying, hey, I'm doing this project, and then you would send them the images, and then you would send them all of the text and stuff like that. Was that all done on the Facebook Messenger?
Yep, all on Facebook Messenger. It took a lot of time. It was very, very time consuming, but it worked. So, and I had to use my resources, and unfortunately, my biggest resource was not my email list.
I think that's a really smart way to go about it. I think a lot of people also, did you feel, for example, like nervous doing that? Like, did you feel nervous having to ask people to share? Like they might say no, they might think like, are you pushing a product on me?
Oh yeah, I felt extremely nervous. And once I started getting all these yes, I thought, okay. And I am not pushy. I am not a salesperson. I am a total first grade teacher. I'm not a good salesperson. So it also gave me a little bit of anxiety of, oh my gosh, are these people going to think that I'm crazy? Or are they going to think that I'm nuts? But I got so much great feedback from it that I just found that it worked. It was worth it, even though it was a little bit like, nerve wracking for me to go out and ask all these people to do these favors for me. It ended up working out. So I was really pleased with that. And also too, I have a lot of my students, parents that I'm friends with on Facebook who know the product, who love the product, who have seen the product in action, who have helped their kids learn how to read. Mm-hmm. So they were more than willing to say, oh my gosh, my son or daughter used this product. It works really well. I instantly saw test scores go up and their reading levels went up and stuff like that. So there was a lot of people who also had used it that could help validate,
That's really smart. That's really smart because you're using the resources that you have available to you. And everyone does have different resources. I have a really small Facebook friends list. I don't have 1,500 people. Right. But other people might have more be more willing to spend money on an advertising budget. This is sort of what the resources that you had available to you, and you're really making them to your advantage, using them to your advantage. What kind of budget?
I have a bunch of Instagram followers. Like I'm not huge on Instagram, and I'm okay on Twitter, but not really too much. So I knew that those were not resources for me. Like I knew Facebook was like where I needed to put most of my focus because that's where I'm the most active, and that's where I have the most followers and stuff. So
well said. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. What kind of budget did you have going into your project, and how are you going about allocating and spending that?
So I heard on one of your podcasts that said, one and done is dumb. Was that on your podcast?
That could have been. There are a lot of episodes, so I don't always remember the exact.
That is so smart because I started thinking, what am I going to do with my second podcast? And I know that I will use my budget much differently on my second podcast, like on my second Kickstarter, sorry. On my first Kickstarter, I did put a chunk of money into the news segments. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a huge chunk. I think my budget was like less than $2,000. It was very, very small, less than $2,000. So I had, I had to do some of the budget for the video, which was like $450. I don't know if I didn't really have anybody to make me a video. So I used the website Fiverr. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Fiverr?
Yep.
Okay, so I used them to help me create like a video. So they did that, and then I used it for my news segments, and then a little bit of advertisement on Kickstarter is really what all my budget went to. But going back and doing it again, I know you guys do a lot with Gadget Flow, and I know a lot of people on here have talked about how great Gadget Flow is. So next time when I do my next one, because I have 2 more books I'm planning on writing, I want to try that avenue.
Okay. When you say advertisement on Kickstarter, what are you referring to exactly?
I'm sorry, not advertisement on Kickstarter. I meant advertisement on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
My fault. I'm sorry.
Were you advertising to your friend group or to strangers?
On Facebook, I was advertising to strangers to get email addresses.
Okay. And how did that turn out? Because that's kind of difficult. I mean, the first
Yeah.
crack at it.
Well, it was a lot more difficult. And like I said, my budget wasn't very big. So I had to really, kind of figure out how was it effective or was it not effective. And after I don't know, I think 5 days, I'd only gotten about 30 email addresses. And so I decided that probably wasn't the most effective way to go. So I pulled out of Facebook advertisement and then just really hit it hard with my friends and with my email list, which my email list only had maybe a little over, maybe 500, maybe a little over that people on it. So that's not huge either,
And were those mainly, I guess, the connections that you have with your friends, family, and professional connections?
Some of them, yeah. And I present at conferences. So I present my reading strategy at conferences. So they're email addresses that I have gotten from people at the conferences and, family and friends.
Wow. You did a ton. This is in my mind, the little engine that could. You were doing so much stuff. It really does astound me that you didn't have any kind of business degree or background, and you were sort of piecing all of this together.
I really had myself, and I had a web guy that I would say, hey, can you change this on my website? Can you add these videos? Can you add these news clips? And then I had one thing I did too was I put on Facebook, I said, does anybody know anybody who has successfully run a Kickstarter? Because I wanted to talk to people who had successfully run it and see what their thoughts were. So I got 2 people back that said that they did, and they connected me with them. And one guy was super helpful. I set up my Kickstarter and I sent it to him and I said, he's run 3 successful Kickstarters. And I said, what do you think? And he was brutally honest, which I really appreciated. And he was like, your graphics stink. So I was like, okay, great. So I found someone to do my graphics. And I felt like that just added so much more character to my Kickstarter, which I really desperately needed. So I thought it was very helpful to track somebody down who had successfully run one and kind of get their insight and get their input. So
almost like a mentorship in that way.
Yeah. I was more begging, please help me. I don't know what I'm doing. One thing I wanted to say too was that I think I heard on your podcast or somewhere the timing. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work of daily work of posting, of updating people, of chatting, and one thing that I heard was that you need to make sure that your family is on board, because if your family is not on board, it's going to be a big struggle. So I sat down with my husband and my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old, and I said, listen, this is something that I'm going to do, but this is also going to be a very time-consuming thing for me. I'm a very hands-on mom. We play basketball in the backyard a lot, play soccer, baseball. We play board games. I'm very much family oriented. And I knew that this was going to take away from a lot of time with them. So I felt like that meeting where we sat down and I said, there's going to be about 2 months here where I'm not going to be able to play with you as much as you would like. And I felt like that was huge going into it, because then I had set the expectations that I have a full-time job, I have 2 kids, and this is something I'm doing on the side, but this side job is going to consume my life for at least 2.5 months.
I think that's really important too, because if you didn't do that, you might feel guilty just not spending that time.
And I already, of course, had a ton of huge guilt for, not playing when they asked. My 5-year-old kind of struggled with it a little bit. But it was very, very important to have their approval and to let them know ahead of time, this is what this next month or 2 is, 2 months to 3 months is going to look like for us. So we all have to be on board with this.
That's a really good tip, because you have that full-time job, and then you also have the job of being a mother, and also you have all these other relationships, family, etc. So there's expectations on you. So that's a really good bit of advice. I think also when you're doing one of these projects, just to have that behind you, it's so much more motivational. It sort of frees you up to use your creativity, to work hard, and then you don't have to have your mind, thinking about, oh shoot, I should be doing this or I should be doing that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was definitely.
Was this sort of like you'd get home after work and then you'd be working then? Were you working on weekends? When were you usually working on the campaign?
Yeah, I would get home from work, make dinner, and then I would sit at my computer and I would just sit at the kitchen table until about midnight, 1 o'clock, get up again at 5:30 and start it all over again.
You are a trooper. Wow.
It is literally that much work. It takes work. And I really, really do not work on this while I'm at school, while I'm at my teaching job. Like, I have to keep them totally separate. So I can just stay focused and make sure I'm doing a great job at being a teacher. And then I'm doing, the best I can at the Kickstarter. So
let me ask you a question. So do you feel that it was worth it? What did it feel like to actually see your project be successful, to know that this is now going to be in the hands of over, hundreds of people around the world, over $20,000 that you raised on Kickstarter? Was it worth it, putting in all of that time and effort?
It was so, so worth it. It felt like the anxiety going into it, which I know people have talked about on here too, the anxiety of going into it and putting yourself out there. And because I was just one person, I felt like I was just putting my whole self out there, and risking failure in front of, thousands of people, which was petrifying and terrifying to me. The anxiety was out of control. And even throughout the whole thing, it was like, what can I do? What can I do? They say, change your video, but I didn't have money to change my video. Then they said, change your Kickstarter, what it looks like. So I would get on there and I could do that. So I would listening to your podcast, I would have the suggestions that these people would put out there just to make it work. And so when I finally got down to I think I hit my goal, I don't know, maybe like 4 days before it was actually over, it felt like the biggest sigh of relief, because my anxiety had been so high the whole time it had been going on, which was like 34 days or something. It felt like a huge burden was lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I could breathe again. It was just,
a big sigh of relief. Yeah.
It was so worth it. I couldn't even have been more thrilled. That's for sure.
I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount. I found that so much of the anxiety also, it's not necessarily that you're live. It's more of that you're live and in the middle of the campaign, there's that loss of momentum. And It's almost like, am I going to make this?
Right.
What other connections can I get, reach out to? Am I being annoying here? Always talking about it. That's where I find a lot of the anxiety comes from.
Yeah, you definitely feel like when I ask people to post, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm so annoying. They're going to just not like me anymore. People are going to be really turned off by this, but you just have to persevere. That I tell my students all the time, my children too, you just have to persevere. You just have to do it. You just have to keep working, and eventually it will all work out. And I'm so glad, even if people thought I was annoying, I'm so glad that I actually annoyed them. And I now I'm listening to like a lot of advertising podcasts, and I heard one lady say, if you're not being annoying, then you're not advertising right. you're not doing your job. You're not getting in front of them enough.
Yeah. I think the thing too is that the only people who usually think you're annoying are the ones who are not interested in helping at all, are not interested in the product at all. And I found that to be certainly true with my work, where the people who really love these shows and podcasts, they just eat it up. Like, it's amazing. And the people who, aren't as interested in maybe running a campaign or, whatever, they're skeptical, they tend to view it as more annoyance.
Right.
So yeah, I totally see that as well. I also saw that I was looking at some of your statistics on KickTrack. It looks like you also had like one or two big funding jumps throughout the project. I just want to ask you, what were responsible for that, and did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they were both people who ran like kind of more so less tutoring companies, and one gave to a nonprofit. So they were both, people that were really invested in Circus Vowels and helping children learn how to read, and that kind of stuff. So that was great.
Did that happen just out of thin air, or were you talking with these people trying to get them invested in the project more so?
One of each. So one just kind of happened out of thin air, that they had talked to, one kind of happened pretty much out of thin air. And then afterwards we talked a lot about it. And one was more, I had to really work hard and, convince them that this would be the best choice for them. And so one I had to do a little schmoozing with to get that donation, but it all worked out. So that was very, very exciting.
How much was that one out of thin air? How much did they end up pledging to the project?
$5,000.
$5,000?
Yeah.
And that just was a notification on your phone. Someone.
Yeah. And then it turned out being, I didn't know it at the time, but then it ended up being the nonprofit owner of a friend who had seen the post.
Wow.
So then we got chatting, and so it was exciting. It was very exciting. It was like, oh my gosh, somebody who had just heard a lot about it, seen a lot of posts about it, and was really interested, watched videos and stuff like that. So they had really done a little bit of research beforehand. So that was helpful.
That's incredible.
I think a lot of videos on because I do a lot of the interactive teaching. I do a lot of phonics with my vests. I don't just do my Circus Vowels reading strategies. I do a lot with phonics in the vest and getting kids up and moving. I probably have the only classroom in the United States where the kids get really excited to do a phonics lesson. They're like, yes, we're going to learn about sounds today. And they get super excited because they know they're going to be able to put the letter vests on, and they're going to be able to spell words, get up and interact. And it makes it fun for them. So.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. I mean, that's incredible. I think we always forget that when you're putting yourself out there, that people that are friends of friends or second degree connections, in marketing terms, can actually see that and they can discover that.
Yeah. And that's why I was just so thankful that I got on Facebook and, just started connecting with all these people and just saying, hey, can you please help me out? I didn't say, hey, I need you to donate to this, or I need you to pledge money to this, or, I just said, will you please just share it? Again, probably if I was more like a saleswoman person, I probably could have worded it to ask them to pledge to the Kickstarter, but I just didn't really know how to do that. So I just said, please share it. Please share. And so the sharing really, really benefited me and really helped out.
Well, yeah, geez, congratulations on all your success. Very hard-won battle and 100% deserved, I think. You've definitely done all the work, done all of the reading, the researching. I want to, give a place where people can go and check out also what you're doing. I don't know if you're going to have if you have this on a website where they can look at, or they can just look at the Kickstarter, or where can they go and check more information about you?
Definitely. My website is circusvowels.org, and that's circus, like you go to the circus and see the animals, and then the vowels, like AEIONU. So it's circusvowels.org. And once I get my vests in, I'm going to also start a YouTube channel that I already have, Circus Vowels, and then I have currently over 75 different lessons that I do with phonics. So I'm going to start a YouTube channel where every day I'll just post a new video of a different phonics lesson that a teacher could teach, just to get your kids up and moving. Because us teachers, we have it tough. We're trying to, go against iPads and all this stimulated stuff these kids have. They're always so stimulated with something, whether it's on, a screen, the Wii, Xbox, something like that.
Tablet, tablet.
We have to get them up. We have to get them moving and engaged, because sitting and reading from a phonics book is so boring, and kids just that doesn't resonate with them.
Yeah.
They need to be up and moving. So.
Also, I'm looking here at your website. You guys can also get a free bookmarker, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. 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 And the bookmarker actually has the reading strategies on it. So the cool thing about the Circus Vowels reading strategies is that all kids have to do is look at a word and they'll know exactly which vowel is going to make which sound within the word. It's also, there's arrows and X's to help explain that. So the bookmark has, if you look at a vowel that has, or if you look at a word that has one vowel in it, if you look at a word that has a vowel then a consonant then a vowel, if the two vowels are next to each other, or if there's two consonants between two vowels, it gives you that visual clue that I give in my book right on the bookmark. So if a kid is reading, they can just look at their bookmark and it will remind them of which vowel is going to make which sound in the word.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, geez, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of great information. I think also just for me, hearing your story that an ordinary person, who has a 9-to-5, also is taking care of kids, is able to run a successful Kickstarter. That's just really empowering to me. I mean, you talk about, empowering young readers, but I think it's also empowering other people out there that are maybe in, a small town, or you don't have access to the same resources or whatever. You can still run a successful Kickstarter campaign if you get serious about it, you do your homework, and you're willing to work hard.
Yeah, thank you very much. You definitely have to do your research in the beginning, listen to the podcast, watch YouTube videos, read everything Kickstarter has to offer. And I think if you really put in the time ahead of time, like is so often said on your podcast, that it really will work out. And just, you got to be creative.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll have to have you back if you do another Kickstarter.
Well, pardon me?
I said we'll have to have you back if you do another Kickstarter.
Yeah. I've got 2 more books with the different vowel combinations, like OU. Like I have my kids wear boxing gloves, and we say OU says ow, and we punch, and the A and the U say ah. So those two vowels will fall in love. So I have another book based on those vowel combinations, and then also spelling with Circus Vowels, because we use it a lot to help us spell words with long vowels. So I'm excited, and I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. You have taught me so much, and I just feel like I would not have been successful in this Kickstarter without you and your podcast and all the amazing guests that you have. So thank you so much. It's really been an honor.
Thanks a lot. That means a lot. It really is just people like you that are willing to come on and share their experience. That's where I think a lot of the great stories come from. I could rattle off lots of advice and tips all day, but it comes back to the community, I think, and being willing to sort of rally around that and share tips. So thanks for sharing your story with us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Man, that was a killer interview. So much good advice, so many good strategies, and also just a really compelling story. I found myself just at times like listening to Jodi as though I was not the interviewer, but really the person listening to the podcast. I was just like amazed by some of the things that she was saying, that she was able to figure out all of this stuff without having any kind of degree in business or background in that. And she was just sort of learning from this podcast and other sources in order to put together this crowdfunding campaign. So I want you to see that as inspirational, that you can also do this, that doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what your vocation is, doesn't matter if you have a 9-to-5 job and you have kids, and you have a wife or a husband, you have family obligations, you can still run a successful campaign on Kickstarter. And Jodi is a great testament to that. Now, at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that Audible is now running a really great deal. So if you are on a shoestring budget, you don't have a lot of money to spend in the way of mentors or education or coaching or online courses, this deal will basically allow you to get a free copy of the Kickstarter Launch Formula. This is my flagship book on Kickstarter. A lot of people said very nice stuff about it. It's an accumulation of more than 5 years of my learning about the platform, of how to launch a successful campaign, the things I've discovered from these interviews, the things that I've realized have worked and that continue to work today, really the tried and true practices, but also some of those tactics that aren't mentioned a lot of other places when it comes to getting more funding for your campaign. So if you want a free copy of the Kickstarter Launch Formula on Audible, you can go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. So that link is going to take you to the Audible page, and all you have to do is click the start a 30-day trial with Audible. And when you do that, you will also get a copy of the book for free. So it's kind of a neat deal. You're not only getting to try out Audible, and you get to also look at some of the other audiobooks they have to continue your education on business, entrepreneurship, advertising, whatever you are interested in. I'm more interested actually in right now personal development and spirituality and those kinds of topics. But really, whatever you're interested in, you can either continue that trial or you cannot, and you will still have access to the book, the Kickstarter launch formula. So you can just go to that link. You can claim your free copy there. But I hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode. Again, my name is Sal, and I'll see you next time.